It began like so many other evenings, the kind you barely notice while you're living them. Quiet, steady, familiar. The kind of evening that feels stitched into the walls of a house you've called home for decades. I was barefoot in my kitchen, the cool tiles grounding me, the kettle humming behind me as the faint scent of mint rose into the air. Nothing about that night was supposed to be extraordinary. And yet, life has a way of turning the smallest, softest moments into echoes you never outrun. My nephew stopped by. Or at least that's the reason he gave. He said he was just dropping something off for his mother. But the truth, what really stayed with me, was the way he looked at me when I turned from the stove. A look I can still feel years later. Before I take you deeper into this story, let me pause here to ask you something. You the one listening right now? Where are you joining me from? Are you in a small apartment in New York? Maybe curled up under a blanket or sitting on a balcony somewhere warm, where the night air feels alive. And tell me, what's the time on your clock right now as you hear this part? I always love seeing the different corners of the world gathered here with me. Now back to that night. The kitchen was wrapped in dim light, just the warm glow above the stove, spilling onto the tiled backsplash. I found myself humming one of those old songs that stays with you, even when decades pass. The air carried the freshness of lemon balm. I had just set a bundle of herbs on the counter when I heard a knock at the side door. Gentle, almost hesitant. When I opened it there, he was Liam, my sister's boy, 26. Tall, lean, with that quiet presence that sometimes made him seem older than he really was. He smiled, brushing summer rain from his hair. "Hey, Aunt Marlene. Mom left her scarf in my car. Thought I'd drop it off." I waved him in. "You didn't need to drive all the way here for that. She'll survive a day without it." He grinned as he handed it over. "Yeah, but she said it's her favorite. Figured I'd score some points." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Sit down for a minute. Tea's almost ready." He slipped into one of the old wooden chairs, watching quietly as I poured steaming water into 2 mugs. Something about him that night was different. Liam was always warm, always polite, but his silence felt heavier, somehow, thoughtful, deliberate. I could feel his eyes lingering on me, not in a way that pressed, but in a way that carried weight. When I set a cup before him, he wrapped his hands around it as though it meant more than just warmth. "How's work?" I asked, trying to soften the quiet. Still with the architecture firm, he nodded. "Yeah. Long hours, but I like it." He hesitated before adding, "It's strange sometimes. Building places you'll never walk through for people you'll never meet. Pouring yourself into something you might never know if it matters." I tilted my head, caught off guard by the gravity in his words. "You've always been reflective, Liam. That's a gift, not a curse." His eyes met mine, then steady, warm, but carrying something unspoken beneath the surface. "I think I get that from you," he said quietly. I felt a tiny hitch in my chest. I smiled, brushing it aside. "Flattery won't excuse you from dish duty." We both laughed, letting the tension slip for a moment. But when I carried the cups toward the sink, I sensed him close behind me. Not so close, it startled me, just close enough that my body noticed, close enough to make me pause, Kettle hissed softly in the background. My hands hovered over the sink, uncertain. I didn't turn right away. I wasn't sure if I should. Then in that hush that seemed to press around us, he spoke soft, steady, almost uncertain. "You always smell like cinnamon and flowers," he said quietly. "Even when I was a kid." I remember it. I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. His eyes were open in that fragile way people look when they're standing on the edge of a truth they're afraid to set free. My voice caught before I found it again. "Liam," he stepped back just enough, a single inch, the smallest signal that he wasn't here to cross a boundary I didn't choose. "Sorry," he whispered. That sounded strange, didn't it? "No," I said gently. "Just unexpected." The moment lingered, stretching out, until it felt like time itself had stilled. The silence wasn't heavy, it was fragile like glass you're afraid to touch. I reached past him to turn off the kettle. "Tea's getting cold," I murmured. He smiled. Not sheepish, not guilty, just soft. "Maybe I'll stay for another cup if that's okay." I nodded. Though inside me, something shifted. Something small, unnamed, but alive. As I poured the water again, I knew that the instant he stepped closer, something in me had stopped, not in fear, not in confusion, just stillness. And sometimes that's the first place where everything begins. The second cup sat untouched. Liam leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the mug, while I fussed with nothing, wiping an already clean countertop, straightening the salt shaker, pretending not to notice the thickness in the air. My kitchen, the same one where I had made thousands of quiet cups of tea, suddenly felt different, not smaller, not uncomfortable, just charged. So I finally said, my voice breaking the silence, "You staying at your mom's tonight?" He shook his head. "No, I've got a room at the inn near the old post office. Too late to drive back to the city." I nodded though. Inside I felt a twist I couldn't name. Guilt, curiosity, longing. "That place still smells like mothballs and dust," I teased. He chuckled. "Probably, but I don't mind. I like old places, places with stories." I looked at him, and then really looked. The boy I remembered, all elbows and restless limbs, was gone. Across from me sat a man, thoughtful, steady, watchful, and he wasn't just looking at his aunt anymore. He was seeing me. Really seeing me. I cleared my throat. "At least it's got a decent mattress. You'll sleep well." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I'm not tired yet." That pause came again, the kind that hums beneath the surface of words. My hands fidgeted my heart too. "You want something sweet?" I asked. "I've got lemon cake from yesterday," sure he said, standing before I could stop him. "I'll help." I turned just as he reached the counter, and suddenly we were face to face. Closer than before. My breath caught, and I hated how obvious it felt. But he didn't step back, didn't look away. His eyes held mine, not pressing, not demanding, just waiting. "You okay?" he asked softly. Such a simple question, but it hit deeper than it should have, because the truth was, no one had asked me that with real sincerity in years. Not since the divorce. Not since the house grew quieter. Holidays, shorter phone calls, fewer. I'm fine, I said. He nodded, though his eyes told me he didn't believe it. I've always liked talking with you, he said. Even when I was a kid. You listened better than anyone. Warmth spread in my chest. Strange, comforting, unsettling. Thank you, I whispered. That means more than you know. We stood side by side, the smell of tea and cake filling the air between us. I reached up for the cake tin, only to find his hand reaching at the same moment. Our fingers brushed. The tin slipped, nearly falling, but together we caught it. That single touch sent a current through me I hadn't expected. My skin buzzed where our hands met. Heat rose to my cheeks before I could stop it. I laughed nervously. Well, that was graceful, but he didn't laugh. Not fully. He looked down at our hands. You're shaking. I pulled away, setting the cake down quickly. I'm just not used to whatever this is. Neither am I, he admitted softly. His eyes held mine with quiet honesty. But it doesn't feel wrong. His words stunned me. Not because they were daring, but because they were bare and honest. I sank slowly into my chair, needing a moment to steady myself. He sat too, and together we cut the cake in silence. He passed me a slice like it was the simplest, most ordinary thing, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every gesture had weight now, every look, every accidental touch of fingertips seemed charged fragile new. I think I've been lonely, I heard myself say, without even knowing why. He lifted his eyes to mine. Me too. That was all. Just those 2 words. Yet the silence that followed held more than 1,000 explanations ever could. That quiet confession soaked into the evening, blending with the scent of lemon and tea, until it became part of the room itself. When it came time for him to leave, I walked him to the door. The rain had stopped, but the night air carried a cool dampness. He lingered in the doorway, hands buried in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. It looked as though he had words, but wasn't sure if he should let them out. I like tonight, he said softly, more than I probably should. The wind swept lightly between us as our eyes met. I know, I whispered. Then he leaned forward, just enough to press a kiss to my cheek. Gentle, respectful, light. But it lingered, like it wanted to stay. When he pulled back, he didn't look away. Good night, Aunt Marlene. Good night, Liam, I whispered back. I closed the door slowly, my heart thudding my hands, trembling, not with fear, but with something I hadn't felt in years. A spark, a pull, a quiet stirring. I hadn't expected to wake again. I stood there in my robe and slippers, frozen the silence of the house, wrapping around me. The next morning, I woke early. Not because life demanded it, retirement has its own rhythm, but because sleep never truly came. My thoughts kept circling back to the night before, to the way Liam's eyes had searched mine, the brush of his hand, the weight of his voice when he said it didn't feel wrong. I wasn't sure which unsettled me more, that it had happened, or that a part of me had leaned into it. Slipping into my robe, I padded downstairs, slippers, whispering across the wooden floor. The house was dark and still, except for the familiar sound of the kettle as I set it on the stove. Tea had become my anchor, something for my hands to cling to when my heart wandered. As the water heated, I opened the back door. The morning air was sharp and cool, the garden refreshed by the night's rain. I stood there with my cup sipping slowly, trying to reason with myself. It was nothing I told myself. A fragile moment. Vulnerability. A young man, a man reaching for closeness. That's all. But then my phone buzzed on the counter. A message. Up early, want to get breakfast before I head out. I stared at the screen, torn between hesitation and a longing I couldn't quite name. If I answered, would it be an invitation? Or a mistake? Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed back, "Sure. The diner near the lake?" His reply came almost instantly. "Perfect. 30 minutes." I didn't respond again. I simply closed the phone, set down my cup, and climbed the stairs to get dressed. I chose a soft grey sweater jeans that felt casual, yet presentable. I brushed my hair back, touched my cheeks with color, and lingered in front of the mirror, longer than I had in years. My reflection looked back at me, 62. Lines etched from laughter and sorrow. Soft edges where once there had been sharpness. A woman who had weathered love loss and long years of silence. And yet, beneath all of it, I felt something alive. Electric. As if life hadn't stopped after all, it had only been waiting. The diner was nearly empty when I arrived, tucked into a corner booth by the window. The air smelled of coffee and butter, the quiet hum of early risers filling the space. I stirred cream into my cup, hands steadying themselves, when the bell above the door rang. Liam stepped inside. His hair still damp from the shower, his pullover a dark shade of blue, his eyes warm and awake. When he saw me, he smiled as though he'd been holding his breath. Until that very moment, "I was afraid you'd change your mind," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I almost did," I admitted softly. He didn't push me further, just smiled softly and reached for the menu. We ordered eggs and toast for him, oatmeal with berries for me. Our words danced lightly across the table, weaving between laughter and small stories, but underneath every sentence was a current we both felt. A quiet pull, undeniable, almost magnetic, somewhere between refills of coffee and his easy talk about a new project he stilled. His gaze settled on me. "I think I've always been drawn to you," he said quietly. My spoon froze halfway to my lips. "Liam," I know he interrupted, a faint smile flickering. "It sounds strange. Maybe even wrong to say out loud. But it's true. Even when I was younger, I didn't have words for it. But I always felt it." I placed the spoon down, slowly exhaling. "You're not a boy anymore. I can't see you that way, no matter how hard I try. I don't want you to," he replied. His eyes were steady, his voice calm. "I want you to see me as I am now, not as your sister's son." Those words, they carried weight. Not reckless, not careless, but rooted in something deep and quietly persistent. I looked at him, the man across the table, with kind eyes, steady hands, and a disarming honesty that reached deeper than I expected. "I don't know what to do with this," I whispered. "You don't have to do anything he said. I just needed you to know." We let silence fill the booth, the clinking of dishes and chatter around us, carrying what words could not. When we stepped outside, the clouds broke and sunlight spread across the damp pavement. I turned ready to say goodbye, but he hesitated, I don't have to leave yet, he said gently. My heart thudded, but my voice stayed steady. Then walk with me. By the lake, he smiled boyish yet sure. I'd like that. We walked slowly, gravel crunching underfoot, the scent of pine and wildflowers drifting on the breeze. For the first time in years, I felt someone beside me, not out of duty, but by choice. His fingers brushed the back of my hand, once featherlight waiting, and I didn't pull away. Because sometimes the quietest truths are the ones you need most. And I was tired of missing. The lake shimmered under the late morning sun, calm, undisturbed. Birds called from the trees, shadows danced across the path. We spoke little yet, the silence carried more than words ever could. On a small bench near the water, half lit by dappled light, I brushed off a few damp leaves before sitting. Liam joined me quietly. We watched the ripples, a duck gliding past as if the world was untouched. His voice came low. I wasn't expecting this, seeing you feeling all of this. Neither was I admitted. It's complicated. He nodded thoughtful. It is. But doesn't it also feel simple in a strange way? I studied him then, the curve of his mouth, the gentle furrow in his brow. It feels honest, I said softly. And that's what makes it complicated. He gave a sad little laugh. I don't want to make your life harder. I just couldn't leave without telling you how you make me feel. And how is that I asked, though part of me already knew? Seen, he said. Known. Like I've spoken to people for years, but only with you have I truly been heard. His words pierced through me. For so long I had been defined by roles. A mother, a wife, a sister, a friend. Rarely had anyone asked who I was beneath them all. Liam wasn't asking for anything. He was simply there. And that stirred something in me, a gentle ache, a fragile awakening. I used to think my life had already happened. I murmured that everything ahead was just memory and quiet acceptance. But now, maybe I still have more to live. He placed his hand near mine on the bench, close but not touching. You do, he whispered. The sunlight warmed my skin. The breeze curled through my hair, and something within me shifted, opening. I don't know where this goes, I confessed. It doesn't have to go anywhere right now, he said. It can just be this. What we are, what we feel. No labels, no explanations, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. We sat there, sharing tears, hidden in laughter, long pauses, and the soft honesty of our separate yet parallel lives. He spoke of his struggles after college. I spoke of rebuilding after divorce. The space between us carried respect, deep, unshaken mutual. When the sun sank lower, shadows lengthened, we walked back slowly. At my door he stopped. I should go, I know, I replied. He didn't ask for anything. He only hugged me. Warm, steady, full. Not romantic, not charged, just real. Acknowledgement of what had passed between us. Thank you for letting me in, he whispered. Thank you for being here. I answered, and then he walked away, hands in his pockets, fading down the path. I stood long after he disappeared, heart alive, in a way I hadn't felt in years. That night, tea in my hands, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I felt remembered, chosen, awake. Something had changed in me forever. Dear friends, if it were you, would you dare to walk beside someone who makes your heart flutter, despite the many obstacles in your circumstances? And right now, where are you hearing the story from? In your city, is it sunny or rainy? Daytime or late at night? Please share so I know, because I believe that love stories like this will touch our hearts, no matter where we are in the world. And if you love emotional stories like this, please subscribe to the Love and Tears channel to help the channel reach 1,000 subscribers. Each of your subscriptions is the greatest motivation for us to continue telling stories that make hearts flutter and eyes tear up.